Everybody could take a seat. Welcome. I'd like to call this meeting of the Pinetop-Lakeside Town Council to order. We do have barely a quorum this evening. We have some council members out on work and vacation. Yes, they're allowed. Anyway, I would ask that you stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Vice Mayor.
Our Father in heaven, we're indeed grateful for this opportunity we have to gather this evening. We're thankful for this beautiful community of which we are a part. Grateful for the moisture thou hast sent to our lands. We're grateful for first responders who we rely on, and grateful for the town employees and their service and dedication. We pray this evening that thy spirit will be with us here, that we'll have a spirit of cooperation, and ask these blessings now in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Item B on our agenda is call to the public. This is a business meeting of the Town Council. The town values and welcomes public input. Please address the council as a whole and not individual council members. Do not address staff or members of the audience. Council action on items brought up in call to the public is limited by the open meeting law. The council may direct staff to study the matter and reschedule for further consideration at a later date. Items on the agenda will not be heard during call to the public, and individuals are limited to 3 minutes. We've got 2 requests tonight to speak. First, we'll have Dorothy Carey. You could come up here and just introduce yourself and tell us where you live.
My name is Dorothy Carey, and I live at 328 West Summerhaven Lane. And I've come to address the council, and I thank you for this invitation to speak. I just want to, we've given the word out to other members of Summerhaven, since obviously most of them are gone. And I must commend my neighbor who researched, and I have presented the letter that she has written concerning the research of what dollar stores do to communities in general. And she went in depth, and I commend her for that, so that there would be more information presented. And the only thing she didn't address in that letter was what I'm concerned about is traffic. It's very difficult to make a left turn from Summerhaven. Very dangerous, but I do understand that ADOT will have their input. But I have concerns about the situation, and other people do too, and I just wanted to address this to you at this time. We have an appeal in, and I believe the letter that your clerk has will accompany that appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dorothy. Randy Harris.
My name is Randy Harris. I live at 364 West Summerhaven Lane. I have been a 20-plus year resident of Summerhaven. Last week, we were at the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting regarding the dollar store construction. I read 5 letters against that, and there's at least 8 more residents that are in opposition to the dollar store going in. Their main concern was not only what Dorothy said about traffic, but the noise from the store, the light pollution, and another issue is devaluing our property. The Planning and Zoning Committee approved the preliminary plan the developer has submitted, and we have submitted an appeal to that plan, and we're moving forward with that. The developer mentioned in his statement to the council, to Planning and Zoning, that he wants to be a good neighbor to the residents of Summerhaven. and they're planning on building a 6-foot fence, wood fence, between the dollar store and Summerhaven. We feel that the wood fence is inappropriate, inadequate, and would deteriorate over a short period of time. If the plan does go through with the approval of the whole town government, we are going to ask that the developer build an 8-foot block wall. We feel that would give us more security and privacy. And I thank you for your time. I'll leave you with this question. Would you want a dollar store being built behind your residence? Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. We always appreciate citizen input. Is there anybody else that needed to speak tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll then move on to item C, which is our consent agenda. All items listed are considered routine matters and will be enacted by one motion of the council. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of town council requests that an item or items be removed for discussion. Council members may ask questions without removal at any time, and items are considered in their normal sequence as listed unless called out of sequence. As you can see, we have 3 items on our consent agenda tonight. Is there any question, discussion? Vice Mayor?
I propose a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. That passes unanimously. Moving then to item D, which is business before the council. Public comment will be taken at the beginning of each agenda item after the subject has been announced by the mayor and explained by staff. Any citizen who wishes may speak one time for 5 minutes on each agenda item before or after council discussion. Questions from council members, however, may be directed to staff or a member of the public through the mayor at any time. First item on the agenda is D1, the Town of Pinetop-Lakeside Proclamation of Week of the Young Child. Whereas the First Things First Navajo Apache Regional Partnership Council and local partner organizations, in conjunction with the National Association for the Education of Young Children, will be celebrating the Week of the Young Child April 1st through 7th, 2023. And whereas these organizations are working to improve early learning opportunities, which are crucial to the growth and development of young children, and building a foundation of learning for everyone in Navajo and Apache counties. And whereas young children and their families in the state of Arizona and Navajo and Apache counties deserve access to high-quality early childhood education. And whereas public policies and programs that support early learning for all young children are critical to young children's futures and the success of our community. And whereas teachers and others who make a difference in the lives of young children and families in Navajo and Apache counties in Arizona deserve thanks and recognition. Now, therefore, I, Stephanie Irwin, Mayor of the Town of Pinetop-Lakeside, do hereby proclaim the week of April 1st through 7th, 2023 as Week of the Young Child in Navajo and Apache counties, and encourage all community partners to work together to make good investments in early childhood health and development. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the Town of Pinetop-Lakeside, Arizona, done in concurrence with the Pinetop-Lakeside Town Council the 16th day of March, 2023. Do we have anybody here from First Things First? Usually they come. Okay, we'll move on then to item D2, which is consider resolution number 23-1662, approving the retirement of K9 Vic from active service with the Pinetop-Lakeside Police Department and transfer ownership of K9 Vic to his handler, Officer Justin McNeil. Commander.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. I'm here tonight to represent the Police Department and, as you stated, request the official retirement of Police K9 Vic. We acquired Vic in July of 2018. He was actually donated from the Aberdeen Police Department in Idaho. We're the third agency that had a chance to work with Vic, and I guess the third time's a charm, so worked out well for us. K9 Vic and his handler, Officer Justin McNeil, went through a 160-hour training academy to get Vic certified as a dual-purpose police dog in patrol and narcotics. They passed that course in April of 2019. Since then, K9 Vic has assisted in many federal, state, and local drug seizures to include heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, marijuana. K9 Vic has also been deployed on numerous special response team callouts, and he's done a lot of public events, doing demonstrations and displays for the public. So with that, we submitted the resolution and a bill of sale to transfer ownership of Vic to Officer Justin McNeil, if that's approved tonight.
Thank you. Council members, any questions or comments? We appreciate K9 Vic's service as well as Officer McNeil in conjunction with K9 Vic. So I would entertain a motion. Vice Mayor.
I move to adopt resolution number 23-1662, approving the retirement of K9 Vic from active service with the Pinetop-Lakeside Police Department, transferring care and custody of K9 Vic to his loyal and dedicated handler, Officer Justin McNeil, as his rightful owner, who will therefore assume all responsibilities and liabilities for K9 Vic and authorize the town manager to execute all documents necessary to complete this transaction.
I second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion, a second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. That carries unanimously. Our next item, D3, is a proclamation in recognition of Police K9 Vic. Before I read that proclamation, I'd like to invite the commander back up, the chief. Chelsea has a video that we're going to watch, and then these gentlemen are going to present some things, and we'll have Justin and Vic come up. Yes, please. That's okay. No worries. Thank you to Chelsea for putting this together for us, too.
Police Department K9, anybody in here? Make yourself known before I release my dog. Anybody in here now? Make yourself known or I'm release my dog. He will find you and he will bite you.
Thank you, Chelsea. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. I just want to personally thank Officer Justin McNeil and Vic for their hard work and dedication to the town of Pinetop-Lakeside and really to all the communities in Navajo County, because he's been a part of a lot of details throughout the county, especially with the SRT team. And it's a huge commitment to take on a canine in addition to your regular duties with the care and maintenance of the animal, all the call outs, all the training that goes along with that. Thank you, both of you, for all you've done. Our community and our county appreciate everything. And I know Vic's going to a great home for retirement and to live out a happy life. So Thank you. In addition, I want to present to you Officer McNeil and Vic a plaque that we had made for him. It says, "In recognition of loyal and dedicated service to the Pinetop-Lakeside community, the department and partner Justin McNeil, number 2091, thank you." Vic's appointment date was 9/9 of 2018, and retirement date will be 3/16 of 23. 4+ years of honorable service with the Pinetop-Lakeside Police Department. Sorry.
Beautiful. Very nice.
I'd like to present this to you. Very much, sir.
Got it? Oh. Okay, now don't go away. I don't want him to go away. Okay. Commander, did you have something else you were going to do? Or do you want me to do that in a few minutes? Okay. All right, then I will go ahead and read the proclamation, which is item, excuse me, have we voted on this? Kirsty, did we vote? Okay, thank you. I apologize, I'm getting confused. We'll move on then to item D3, which is a proclamation in recognition of Police K9 Vic. In recognition of Police K9 Vic for his dedication and service to the citizens of Pinetop-Lakeside as a member of the Pinetop-Lakeside Police Department. Whereas K9 Vic became a member of the Pinetop-Lakeside Police Department in 2018. And whereas K9 Vic and his handler, Officer Justin McNeil, received their certificate of completion from the Basic K9 Handler Academy as dual-purpose patrol and narcotics on April 4th, 2019, thus meeting the minimum certification standards established by AZ Post 15-206, the National Police Canine Association, the National Narcotic Dog Association, and Arizona Law Enforcement Canine Association standards. And whereas K9 Vic has assisted many federal, state, county, and municipal law enforcement agencies by locating significant quantities of illicit narcotics and dangerous drugs, to include heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, and marijuana. And whereas K9 Vic has participated in numerous public demonstrations that featured his drug detection and suspect detention skills. And whereas K9 Vic has been deployed on numerous special response teams, call-out events, and whereas K9 Vic recently sustained an on-duty injury requiring surgery, which degraded his ability to continue as a police canine. And whereas K9 Vic retired from the Pinetop-Lakeside Police Department on March 16th, 2023. Now, therefore, it is proclaimed by Mayor Stephanie Irwin and the Town Council of the Town of Pinetop-Lakeside that the citizens of Pinetop-Lakeside express their warm appreciation and gratitude to Police K9 Vic for his 4 years of dedicated service as a police canine for the Town of Pinetop-Lakeside. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the Town of Pinetop-Lakeside, Arizona, done on the 16th day of March, 2023. And I'm going to come down and present you the proclamations. Go ahead.
K91.
to King 91's final call for Police K9 Vic. K9 Vic has finished his last shift for the Pinetop-Lakeside Police Department. He has served for the Pinetop-Lakeside community for the 4+ years, alongside his partner, Officer Justin McNeil. Vic has had a successful career from July of 2018 to March 2023. Vic has helped in seizures of countless drugs and apprehensions of numerous suspects during his career. Thank you, K9 Vic, for your time and service to our community. You will be missed. Enjoy your retirement. Clear at 1820.
Thank you. I hope he has a great retirement. He's got a lot of years left, I know. Thank you for taking him on. Before you officers, I know you probably have to go back on duty. There's some cupcakes over there, and there's a cake specially made for Vic by our town clerk, Christy. Thank you, Christy. So please go take some. If you need to, take them to go. There's some cups over there. So thank you all for being here, and we will miss him. We're going to move on to item D4, which is a hub and spoke recycling feasibility assessment presentation from Bill Campbell and Raj Bush. I apologize. Come on up.
Making sure the pointer's working. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Thank you very much for inviting us to present the hub and spoke work that we did with a USDA grant. It's kind of hard to top that presentation after that beautiful and touching ceremony, so forgive me. Oh, there it goes. All right. It is working. So here's the agenda, and we'll be open to questions during the presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do at the Robin Melanie Walton Sustainable Solutions Service, give you an overview of the project team, and then Bill is actually going to present the hub and spoke scenario analysis that we did with Matt and the team. So my name is Raj Bush. I've been with ASU for 10 years now, and all of that time with Bill, we've been with the Robin Melanie Walton Sustainable Solutions Service. It was a service that was created by President Crow from a grant from the Robin Melanie Walton Family Foundation to work with external organizations, towns, cities, public organizations, private organizations to help them become more sustainable. And so this is kind of our framework, our approach. We partner with our partners, our collaborators, our clients, if you will, to essentially assess the problem, convene the correct team, design and pilot, and then scale solutions. And there's the collective approach that we take by convening everybody, cultivating trust, co-designing, and connecting. Here's a summary of the work we've done over the last 10 years, over 120 projects in 12 countries across continents, businesses, cities, NGOs, 65 different funders. The types of work we do is research studies, feasibility studies, cost-benefit analyses, things like that. So an overview of the project. We were funded in 2021 by USDA to design essentially a hub and spoke recycling system. The problem with recycling for rural communities is that there's not enough of this waste, and it's relatively expensive to offer that as a service. So the idea of a hub and spoke system is to aggregate recyclable waste from many communities, surrounding communities, around a 50-mile radius, let's say. So, and places like New Mexico, Iowa, they've tried these things, they do work, but we don't have anything in Arizona. So USDA asked us to design a model, a cost-benefit analysis tool to assess how we could do that. And Matt and his team were kind enough to work with us and allow us to model Pinetop-Lakeside as the hub with some surrounding spokes. And Bill will present the details of that. As part of the project, there was some technical assistance and training that we had to provide. And we reached over 200 participants, rural participants that got to learn about recycling and the benefits of recycling and some of the costs versus the revenues. So here's the project team, Matt and Melina and the team here in the Public Works Department. Bill and myself from ASU. And then we had 3 ASU students, Romina, Gabby, and Arnab. JB Shaw from Arizona Department of Environmental Quality was a partner with us. And then Sarah Pierpoint, the executive director of the New Mexico Recycling Coalition. She's the one that runs the hub and spoke system in New Mexico. There's actually 13 clusters in New Mexico. So, and it's been going for about 15 years, Bill? 12 years, something like that. So we asked her to help us with our work. So now here's the scenarios we're going to talk about today. Bill's going to talk about the business as usual scenario. That's the break-even scenario of the way recycling currently works in Pinetop-Lakeside. Scenario 1 is Pinetop as the hub with drop-off centers at the spokes. Scenario 2 is a private hauler, which Recyclops was the private hauler. I think they were already operating in Pinetop a couple of years ago. I think they've stopped operating, offering their services, but what would that scenario look like if it was to be expanded? And then the final scenario is replicating what a lot of other towns and cities do, which is a monthly fee for recycling. What might that look like if that was to be put in place in Pinetop? And of course, we're not advocating any particular scenario. We just want to kind of objectively look at the cost benefits of different scenarios.
My name is Bill Campbell. I'm Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Chamber. And I've been also been at ASU for 10 years. I'm going to go through this project, and I'm going to use my computer so I can see the numbers, because we have a bunch of numbers here. Please ask questions along the way. What we did was we looked at material flows, and the cost, and the miles, and the market rates. So there's lots of numbers we're going to present here. So please feel free to slow me down and ask questions along if you have would like to better understand where we're at. Okay, so we start off looking at, this is your collection center. Okay, you guys are probably familiar with it, but we'll do a quick review. The collection center collects a lot of material. Our focus was primarily on the blue bin material. The stuff, the household material that gets recycled, plastics, metal, glass, paper, and cardboard. Okay, the collection center does collect a whole lot of other materials, green waste, appliances, furniture, and whatnot, but our focus is strictly on stuff that we call the blue bin material, generally speaking. It's got 2 things going here. Okay, so what we wanted to do is look at the business as usual to try to where are you guys at today? So in 2020, you guys recycled 120 tons of material. This is the breakdown of the streams. The way the recycling center works is residents bring the material to the recycling center and pay $2 for the equivalent of a 50-gallon garbage bag of material. Okay, and then they take the material, they separate it into existing containers, and they go on their way. So to 120 tons in 2020 with 14,675 bags dropped off. Oops. Okay, so as Raj said, we first looked at business as usual. What we wanted to do is better understand where you guys are at today. So we started introducing additional work or additional materials from other neighboring towns. It doesn't cost the city or the residents here, right? So understand where you guys are at. So we're bringing more material. We're going to just make sure that the other towns and residents are paying their own way. Okay, so business as usual. Basically, these are the material streams and where they go. Oops, I'm sorry. Problem here. Raj, can you work this one? Because I'm obviously not doing a very good job. Can you go back one slide, please? You got to do it. If it has to be here, I can figure it out.
You hold it up high. All right. Oh, there it is. Look at that.
Okay.
Is that what you want?
I want to be on the business as usual page. This is it. Okay, thank you. This is where we're at. That's the secret. Okay, so we looked at the situation where you're at, and you determined based on, you guys do not collect your own waste, but we used EPA numbers to determine that the amount of waste collected in a town your size, population, households, and you determined you guys were at basically a 3%, a little over 3% diversion rate. Okay, the amount of money collected in your recycling center for recycling, for blue bin recycling, is $46,000. And the amount of material that's collected is roughly 26% of the material compared to everything that's collected at the recycling center. So using that information, we used 26% as the OpEx budget. We didn't have a breakdown. There's a cost of the operating expenses for the collection center. So 26% of that was about the amount that we have roughly of that material. And that was also about the amount, you can go to the next one, please, Raj. Roughly yes, there you go. So at 26%, the collection center basically breaks even, bringing in $46,000 from the residents, $19,000 from the sale of material, and balancing that against the costs of processing and delivery. Okay? And so next slide, please. So looking at the spokes, during this process, we interviewed a number of communities throughout the state of Arizona. We focused specifically in your area. We spoke to most of these towns, and these would be the towns which would most likely be opportunities for spokes. The largest cost in waste management processing, which includes recycling, is transportation. So making sure that they're reasonably close was an important piece of the puzzle. So these are the towns we looked at, 6 towns, and 2 of the towns, because they're adjacent towns, we use them as one spoke where they would share a drop-off center. Okay, so looking at the spokes themselves, the material that they would provide, we looked at them and say, assuming that they divert at the same rate as Pinetop-Lakeside without plastics. We didn't include plastics because currently all the material you guys collect is sold to market except for plastics. Plastics are delivered and collected from the city of Phoenix for free, but it's not a revenue stream. The amount of material the residents pay for their bags covers the cost of processing them, but there's not a material stream there's not a revenue stream for them. So for the spokes, we did not include plastics because it just added too much to the cost. Okay, and the goal for us was to allow the spokes to process in a similar way, providing all the same material stream as Pinetop-Lakeside collects, except for the plastics, and also charge their residents either $2 or $3 a bag. We want to make it affordable for their residents also. We figured that was what we aimed for. Okay, so what they would do is they would staff a drop-off center, collect the material, the equivalent of a 50-gallon bag, a garbage bag of recyclable material for $2 or $3 a bag. That's going to vary, as you're going to see up here. And it's going to vary depending on how far the towns are and how big the towns are. Okay, and so what we see here in this next slide is that the towns would bring in an additional 574 tons of material, which would increase the processing capacity, or require the processing capacity at your current facility to be increased by almost 580%. Okay? So look at the first scenario we look at is basically the towns said that the spoke towns set up a, next one please, Raj. Okay, thank you. So basically the towns set up a drop-off center where they have one of these multi-compartmental recycling trailers for the different streams. They collect the streams, store separated, and they would staff this because you have to staff a recycling facility, otherwise you get contamination and garbage. And they would charge, and also somebody's got to collect the dollars. And the way we have this designed is for this first scenario is Pinetop-Lakeside would go and collect the material, collect these trailers from the spokes. Okay, so there would be a spare trailer, maybe a couple of spare trailers. We'll talk about the capital expenses in a few minutes. But there would be an additional trailer, so we'd bring an empty trailer down to the spokes, collect their full trailer, and bring it back. Okay, and the cost of that is all built into the processing fee that the spokes would pay to Pinetop-Lakeside. Okay, again, the focus is Pinetop-Lakeside is helping their neighbors, but they're not paying for their neighbors. Okay, they're allowing their neighbors an opportunity to recycle through the existing process, the existing somewhat robust systems you guys already have.
Bill, what would be the capacity of this trailer? Just
I don't have that stuff off the top of my head. I think it was about a ton. About a ton, if I remember correctly, yes.
okay. So that would equate to, Matt, how many times would we have to go pick it up? I know it depends, but based on your scenario here of diversion rates. And
I'm sorry, I don't have that off the top of my head. We do have that in the reports. And we did include those costs, and it's going to require additional full-time employees.
For the town, okay.
Yes, for the town. And that's actually something we're going to talk about pretty quick here.
Okay, sorry, I got ahead of you.
No, please ask away. There's a lot of pieces, and we have been deep in this for a while.
When I've read, yes.
Okay, so we want to make sure that you guys, I'm explaining what you guys can understand.
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Can I ask you? I might have the numbers in here, the shipping, transportation, but let's get to it.
Okay.
Go ahead, here's the next one.
So basically
Hang
we're
on
saying,
just 1 second.
Let me just, for clarification, so you're saying though, you wouldn't pick up plastics from any of these?
right, in this first scenario, there's no plastics from the spokes. Okay, because of the fact that plastics have no revenue stream, and they are fairly expensive to transport because they are light and bulky. Okay, the spokes, it pushes spokes over the $2 and $3 limit that we were trying to hold us to.
And maybe this is more of a question for Matt, a follow-up question. I would assume, I know what I take there, the majority is plastics. And I would assume that's the majority of what we collect at our center, is that right?
Yeah, we collect a significant amount of plastics.
And another question, Snowflake Taylor used to have some trailers, I know, for collection. Do they not anymore? Or
We still have them. We have the only trailers left.
Okay.
But we only haul about 1.5 tons per 40-yard can plastic.
But Snowflake Taylor doesn't, they used to have some down there. They used to have some collection points. They don't at this point.
They do anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, by volumes, plastics make up a significant portion of the waste stream, but by weight, as you can see what Raj has up there now, they don't make up a significant portion. They're kind of right in line with some of the other streams. And right in the middle, it looks like. Yeah, plastics are a challenge for sure. In the second scenario, we were able to include plastics. So there's different ways you could do it. We were just, for the scenario we created, we tried to, under what conditions could we make this work? This is not the only conditions under which it could work. Okay? Okay, you want to jump ahead, Raj, to the capital expenditures page?
That one?
That one right there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so, as we said, the folks in New Mexico did this earlier, and so we learned a lot from them, and also talking with Matt and his team, on the type of equipment you would need to expand the capacity of your processing at the collection center. Okay, so you need a covered building because you're going to need more storage for material. You need to bale your material because transportation becomes a whole lot more important when you want to get a lot more efficient in your transportation. So this is just some of the type of equipment you need to be able to process that. Pinetop-Lakeside already has some of this equipment. It's really up to Matt and his team to determine, condition, capacity, what else is needed. And I believe that Matt and his team have applied for a grant with the EPA to fund some of this very stuff. Okay, so our fingers are crossed. We're hoping you guys get selected. Okay, so this is the capital equipment to expand the capacity for Pinetop-Lakeside so they can process their neighbors' equipment. The next one, Raj. Okay, so what this looks at is with the additional 574 tons, okay. Thank you, Raj. With the additional 574 tons, Pinetop-Lakeside would need to hire additional 3.72 FTE, okay, for hauling from the spokes, the additional processing of the material, the baling of the material, and transporting the material, to markets. Okay, so one of the benefits of Pinetop-Lakeside, helping their neighbors out, is additional jobs. Okay, and we have, throughout our process, we did all of our calculations, assuming $30.63 as a per hour employee rate. That included all in taxes and benefits. Okay. So then looking at the spokes, okay, what do? They have to establish a drop-off location. So they're going to need some capital equipment also. Not only the trailers, probably a fence, and maybe a little shed or whatever for the person to stay out of the snow and the rain when it happens. They would charge the residents $2 or $3 per bag. Collect all the same material as Pinetop-Lakeside, except for plastics. And the benefit would be they would be diverting material from the landfill. Okay. And looking at this page, you can see how the price varies, either $2 or $3 per bag. It really depends a lot on the distance from Pinetop-Lakeside. Transportation is the largest cost. And that $2 or $3 would cover the transportation of the material from the spokes to Pinetop-Lakeside, by Pinetop-Lakeside doing the hauling, and also the staffing on a variable number of hours. Okay, this we looked at staffing the facility, a minimum of 20 hours. We figured that was reasonable, and and then this allowed them so they will also benefit from another employee of some sort, not a full employee, not in this scenario for anyone, but a partial employee. Okay, so this $2 or $3 covers the processing material and the staff, so the hourly rate to that person. Okay. So this next slide kind of shows the kind of high level of everything that's about the financials for Pinetop, with the focus being on Pinetop-Lakeside. Okay, what we see here is at the 3.06% diversion rate, Pinetop-Lakeside would collect $250,000 processing fees from the spokes. And we'll talk about the details of the per ton volume of that a little bit later. Okay, and another thing that we talked about with Matt and his team, and we built into the model, was currently paper and cardboard are all collected together, okay, and delivered unbaled to a processor. Okay, well, if the material gets baled, it's separated, you're able to get a higher rate for it. Okay, so what we did, we built in this model with the assumption that the material would be baled, so therefore it could be transported more efficiently, and you would also get a higher rate for it. Okay? So in doing this, the net benefit, next slide please, Ryan, shows that Pinetop-Lakeside, in addition to their FTEs, would benefit $16,000. Okay, and part of that is because little bits from the spokes, because we didn't break them even exactly, and we rounded it up to make sure that the money. Again, the idea was Pinetop-Lakeside not doing it as the goodness of their heart. Everybody's got to pay their way, right?
But that's net after paying for all the costs. That's on top.
Yeah, this is net. And so, and so this is, really, for the most part, the spokes are paying for their own stuff, okay, break even. A little bit of that money is going to, rounded up, go into Pinetop-Lakeside. The reason Pinetop-Lakeside gets more money is because, one, you're more efficient in your transportation. Your 120 tons is now being transported in fewer trips, okay? Your 120 tons is now baled and separated your papers, so you're getting a better market price for them. Okay, so that's where, so there's benefit to Pinetop-Lakeside residents just for, taking out, the additional capacity not only helps the spokes bring in their material, because it's additional capacity and increased efficiency, it also helps lower the cost for Pinetop-Lakeside. And we'll break that down at a per ton level in a little bit. Okay? Okay, in fact, we'll break it down this next slide. Okay, so basically this slide talks about baling, as we talk about baling the recycled material and use of the pup trailer, increases the weighted average per tons per trip, from a little under 2 to almost 12. Okay, because you're baling the equipment. So you can fit a lot of bales on a flatbed, especially if you're using the pup trailer, which if you guys are aware, a pup trailer is basically basically doubles your capacity from the flatbed or so. And so looking at this slide, we'll go over this one slowly. We again focus on business as usual. Our calculations determine a cost center processing, collection center processing of almost $260 per ton. Okay, and the transport to market, business as usual, $284. Okay, well, based on scenario one, if Pinetop-Lakeside has this additional equipment for processing, baling the equipment, and transporting the equipment, there's more work to be done here at the collection center. So your processing costs actually go up because now you're baling it. In today's world, not trying to diminish the amount of work that people are doing, but today's world, the residents source separate it for you, cover it, load it on the back of a truck, take it to town. It's not that simple, right? But now baling the material, moving it around the collection center, loading it onto a truck, takes more time, more FTE. Okay, so we try to take into account that. Okay, but the transportation to market is significantly less because, as we talked about, more tonnage per trip. Okay, and so the overall cost is less. Okay, based on our calculations, the overall cost will be lower. The revenue per stream, per ton, in the revenue line, that's a per ton, they're all per ton costs, would be higher because now we're getting more money for cardboard and paper than we were before. Okay, so those are how we compared where Pinetop-Lakeside went from business as usual to the upgraded scenario with the additional equipment. Okay, so the spokes, the processing within the collection center is the same, basically the same. Okay, because once it comes in, it all gets processed by the same folks with the same equipment. Okay, hauling material, spokes pay for that, basically $59 a ton. Okay, that's an average cost. Each spokes pays what it costs. The cost based on distance. Okay, and the transport to market is less for the spokes in this case, and that is because of plastics. Okay, spokes aren't collecting plastics, and so they're not paying for they're not paying for the plastics. It's transportation. But still, the total processing fee comes out to about the same. Okay, so basically the total processing is about the same, and then the revenue that's collected, again, we see the spokes getting a little bit higher revenue in this example because, again, they don't have plastics. Plastics brings down the per ton revenue stream for Pinetop-Lakeside. Okay, just by a little bit. Okay, I don't know if I have that here. Where do I talk about that? Maybe I'll talk about it here in case I don't cover it again. So generally speaking, the way that the resident, once the material comes to Pinetop-Lakeside, it's all going to be commingled together, right? So you're not really going to know whose is whose, right? So then this is common. City of Phoenix collects material from other cities, or accepts material from other cities at their MRF. And what they do is they will pay they charge the spokes, they charge the other, I guess they're spokes for them too. They charge the spokes the full processing rate, the rate that's going to cost them to process and take it to market. Okay, in this case, $438. And then once the material gets sold, right, when they bring it to market, assuming you guys are aware that the recycling rates are somewhat variable, based on what the market rate that they get, they pay the spokes what's called a commingled fee. Okay, it's basically an average of all the material that was brought over a specified period of time, divided by the number of tons that each spoke provided. Okay, that's called a commingled fee. Okay, and we basically took, so I don't remember the exact date, but I think it might have been, I want to say March, but we're in March now, probably November or October. We took the market rates at that time. Okay, so they are going to vary. They vary by stream. Okay. Thoughts or questions on that so far? You know that was a mouthful?
Questions?
Okay. Scenario 2. First one for scenario 2.
That one?
Yes.
All right.
Good. So then we looked at scenario 2. And until not that long ago, Recyclops, as a hauler, was providing recycling services to Pinetop-Lakeside. And what they do, their model, they use what's called the gig economy, okay, where they hire individuals to use their own trucks to go collect material from residents' homes. They're paid by the route. Okay, so the individual residents here collect the material from the residents, and then they're brought to the collection center. And they paid $2 a bag at the collection center. And source separated the material, just like a resident brought it in. So they provided the service of going to the household, getting it, bringing it to the collection center. Their costs, I don't know what they're charging Pinetop-Lakeside residents, but we've talked to Ryan at Recyclops. Their cost is basically $15 to $30 per household. It depends on how many households they have, stuff like that, okay? How far they have to take it. We said the gig economy, and the materials are by $2. Okay? Okay, good question. So we did ask Matt why he stopped. And he said the reason he stopped is they couldn't make the numbers work. Okay, so he said basically what they need is they need 50 or more customers, or someone to take it on as an owner-operator of a franchise. Okay, I don't know the details of what that means, okay? But someone to kind of take responsibility for it. They just couldn't make it work. But he said they would be more than interested in talking to the town or to the local towns to see how they can make it work. A scenario where multiple spokes participated, it would certainly be interesting to the Recyclops folks. Maybe it would give them a little bit of more opportunity to bring their services back here to Pinetop-Lakeside also. Okay. Okay, so under this scenario, the other way, thank you. Under this scenario, a couple interesting things happen. First of all, Pinetop-Lakeside no longer hauls the material from the spokes. Right? Recyclops doing that. Okay? The second thing that happens is Pinetop-Lakeside no longer has to give revenue share, the commingled rate we talked about before, to the spokes. Right? To a great extent, the spoke municipalities aren't involved, other than allowing this business to do collections from the residents. And hopefully, help get the word out to encourage the residents to recycle. Okay? Next thing that's interesting is the additional revenue, because at $2 a bag, that's more than the $438 that we're paying before, the $340 processing fee we were paying before. It just comes out more. So if the residents of the other towns are paying $2 a bag, like the Pinetop-Lakeside residents are paying $2 a bag, we can include plastics. Because Pinetop-Lakeside residents, the rate they pay covers the cost, including plastics. The other towns pay the same amount. That covers plastics, and the transportation is covered based on the monthly fee that Recyclops charges to the residents. And he's got different ways of doing it. Sometimes he'll have a collection site where he'll have a storage unit or something where they'll collect from the residents, put it all in the storage unit, and then he'll pay someone else to take it from the storage unit to the collection center. Okay, so he's got a bunch of different models to make it work. He's actually all over the United States and growing rapidly. Just for whatever reason, he couldn't make it work here. But like I said, he's willing to try again. Okay, so the two things here are we have additional tonnage, which includes plastics, and the per bag covers more. Okay, so the next page, what we see is there's a 12, because of the additional plastics, there's a 12% increase in the cost of processing. Okay, and 124% increase in the cost of hauling the material to market. That's all plastic. We're shipping air for the most part. Okay, even when it's baled, there's just not enough density there. Okay, so we talked about the business as usual scenario. Just under 4 people as FTE. Well, in this scenario, we would have almost 4.6 FTE to cover the additional workers necessary to do this. And also, because of the things we talked about before, no revenue share, and they're paying the full rate, the full $2 per bag, there is a benefit of a higher net revenue for Pinetop-Lakeside. Okay? Okay, yes, last questions? This is a lot in this slide. Okay, and so with this base, it's a 500% increase in the net revenue from the scenario 1, for the very reasons we talked about. No revenue share, $2 per bag, just more money. Okay, plus no going to collect the material from the smokes. Next one is slide 30. Okay, so then what we did was we looked at what would happen instead of this, something Matt had mentioned, or maybe we talked about it, I should say. What would happen if the Pinetop-Lakeside set up a monthly fee instead of charging $2 per bag? Everybody brings it for free. When you get to the collection center, it's free, but it's part of your monthly bill. Okay, so based on the cost, that $14,000 number, the number of households, it was $2 per month, or $24 annually. Okay, so this provides a more consistent funding source for Pinetop-Lakeside. However, the per bag household fee, as opposed to the per household fee, as opposed to the per bag fee, separates the level of funding from the volume of material, right? If it's free for everyone to drop off at because it's part of their monthly fee, right, you might get more people bringing it, which is a good thing, but our calculations are based on the 14,000 bags they're getting today, okay? So the next slide, we also did it at 10%. So let's say we got a 10% diversion, meaning lots of more people are bringing it, okay? Yeah, the next one, please. Oh, there it is. Oh, there it was. Okay, 10%. In order to that volume level, you need to charge $6 per month. Okay? So you think, it's about 3 times more, that's math. So the increased material, however, the increased material could introduce a number of strategies because it could reduce overall costs. Right? You're going to get more economies of scale. For example, maybe the markets.
Can I ask you to step back and talk to this slide again because I was on the wrong slide.
Okay, I'm sorry, yes. So thank you, Raj. I should have paid closer attention, thank you. So this is where we're talking about the monthly fee. Okay, so at the $14,000 rate that you guys are bringing in today, it would cost $2 per bag, $2 per month for each household. Right? And everyone's free at the collection center then. Still got to sort of separate it, but everyone brings it, it's for free. Okay, so it's still probably still to be staffed, of course. And this would provide a more consistent funding structure. You know how many houses you got roughly. That's not going to change greatly, and everybody pays. Again, what the challenge is, it separates volume from the actual amount of funding. Okay, right now, your volume and your funding are directly tied together.
So we have a lot of out-of-town folks that utilize our collection center, so we would also then charge them similar to what we're doing now?
That's the way the model works.
Right,
In
okay,
reality,
that's what
you guys
you
can
guys.
figure out how that would work.
Okay.
Right? I don't know if they suspend their trash service when they're not here, you know, or how that would work.
Okay,
But yes, there are challenges in that because it's, you know, right now the $2 per bag, it's a direct connection.
This is to assume that we were doing a trash service with it.
gotcha,
It's to see what it would cost us just to do the recycling part of it.
okay,
So I think you gotta look at that too as well.
Right,
okay,
and
thanks,
that's a
Matt.
great point. Thank you, Matt. Because, you know, when we talk, you know, if you go to the next one, we'll address that very thing. We just did the straight calculation.
Right.
You know, but of course, whether you guys implement it, it would make sense to do the trash at the same time. And we'll talk about that more. So it's because the $10 per 10% diversion rate, which hopefully we'll start heading towards, right? The actual national average is 34%-ish, something like that. It would cost $6.80. And but there could be economies of scales issues. You know, it could be potential local economic development. You know, the folks who are currently taking your tin are local, and they would expand their business, so potentially get more jobs there. The markets, I know we've seen scenarios where the markets will come get the material, as opposed to you have to deliver it. Okay, and other automation or other technologies could help, you know, make this more cost effective. That Matt and his team would have to figure out how to fit into your environments. Okay, okay. So also look at the so as the cost of recycling rises with increased diversion, the cost of collecting, processing, and landfilling is going to go down. Right, less material. Well, unfortunately, at least in today's world, the majority of the communities in rural Arizona and all the communities in the Pinetop-Lakeside region contract out their waste hauling to private services. So as recycling goes up, the waste haulers would benefit because they're not going to change their monthly rates, right? But they're hauling less material. Okay? Now there's a little bit of an exception here. If they own the landfill, then, you know, when private haulers own the landfill, they make money on the collection and they make money on the tipping fee. Okay, so if they own the landfill, it's a little bit fuzzier. You know, how much you know, whether or not how they benefit, but the town will not benefit necessarily from the decreased waste, okay, unless, as Matt suggested, you guys decide to start collecting your own waste, and it makes most sense because then the cost of recycling is offset by the state landfill tipping fee. Landfill tipping fees continue to go up, and you would benefit from that if we shift things to recycling, if that landfill cost could be saved because you were the hauler of your own waste. Anything to add to that? Thanks, Matt. Okay, so let's go back to scenario one, because that was really the guts of our analysis. Just kind of a benefit scenario. So additional capital equipment to more efficiently process your own material. Additional capacity, just some more optimized operations. A little bit of FTE for hauling the spoke materials, processing and hauling. You know, our calculations show that there was a net benefit or primarily decrease in the cost of your own processing because of this capital equipment. And just, I don't know if we mentioned this before, but this is the model that New Mexico used also. They got external funding from federal or state organizations to buy the capital equipment, and then their residents pay the ongoing operational costs. Okay, so that's kind of why we implemented this model, why Sarah was part of our team, Sarah from New Mexico. It also benefited the additional 574 tons diverted from the landfill. Right, it saves landfill space, you know, and also keeps material in the system. Okay, the spokes benefits. They get a little bit of additional capital equipment also. The multi-compartment trailer, drop-off location, perhaps a fence and a shed. They get access to markets, which they don't have today, for the residents, and they get a little bit of FTE for their municipality. Okay, and that is all.
That was a lot of information. Thank you,
It is a
Bill
ton
and
of
Raj. That
information.
was great. Any questions or comments from the council? Vice Mayor?
I have a question. What's the opinion of these possible spokes? I mean, what's their,
Great question. We got mixed reviews when we spoke to them. Okay, some people said, oh, our residents don't want to pay for it. You know, some had like, well, you know, they were a little more open to listening. You know, now that we have scenarios where potentially, you know, one of the keys here with the recycling system is if you get it started and make it work, you know, it's almost like build it and they will come. You know, so the only residents who want to, you know, and one of the common things we heard was only a small percentage of the residents want to pay for it. Well, only a small percentage of the residents here in Pinetop-Lakeside are paying for it. I believe, if I had that number in here, I'm not sure if I said it out loud, I believe our calculations, again, we don't have it, we can't know for sure, but based on EPA estimates, 12.9 or 13% participation rate from Pinetop-Lakeside households. Okay, so really a small percentage is paying for it. The majority don't want to pay for it, or maybe aren't aware of it, right? Or maybe would pay for it if it became more convenient, right? Or became more the thing to do, right? Get that vibe going for us. So
There are 1,800 households by the numbers we did in Pinetop-Lakeside. But only about 200 of them are participating by the numbers.
that's assuming you use the EPA numbers that they're all bringing their full loads. Their full amount of what the EPA calculates each household would have for recyclable material. But yes, it's small. Like Raj is pointing out, small number. And so all the towns said only a small number of people will pay for it. We're saying only a small number of people have to pay for it, and it could work. There's benefits to your town if you build it. Especially if there's other scenarios where instead of Matt and his team going collecting from the spokes could bring it here themselves. Right? They could figure out the numbers, how that would work. But their commitment wouldn't be that high. They do get some benefits with a little bit of FTE, and they provide the service to the residents. So it was mixed. We're hoping that now with better information, that it would be better received.
It seemed like a lot of the benefit was just from bailing, from having the trash bailed. Would we benefit as a standalone exercise installing a baler?
Yeah, so that's the whole point, is we looked at all the different scenarios, and I think if you dig deep into the numbers here, you'll start to notice there's one flaw of the collection center. And the flaw of the collection center is the weight we're hauling to Phoenix. Currently, the plastic is going down at about 1.5 tons per container and 1.5 tons for the back container. So I'm only hauling 3 tons to the valley. Well, we've got a semi that can haul 80,000 pounds. That's kind of puts it in perspective.
Do we know what a payback would be for a baler? Just based on just us right now?
No, we don't. That really comes down to we need more throughput. So that's what the conversation is we need more than what ours is to generate enough. Right now we're keeping even with what we have. We would need more to come in to really make yes. Okay. And so the thought is, with the grant that we applied to the EPA with, is to buy another truck and another 10 cans. That sets us up for the ability to do that if any other town would want to come along and bring us the material right now. So the current situation we're in is that we looked at the situation and said, we don't have enough trucks and cans to pull this off currently. And so if we set ourselves up for success in the future, as it starts to grow, we should be able to handle anybody that wants to bring us material. Is kind of where I was headed with that.
And one other comment or question, we had multi-compartment trailers here before, and they didn't work out for us. And I think the reason they didn't work out well was because the plastic compartment would fill right up, and then they started migrating plastic into the other containers. So the question is, if we get plastics out of the equation, do we have a high confidence that those multi-compartment trailers would work?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, I don't know the exact situation before. I think one of the problems might have been contamination too, Matt had mentioned.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, people we've talked to, cardboard often fills up the most because that's so big. A 10-compartment trailer, I mean, we only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 streams. So you have some of your compartments being multiple, 2 for plastic, maybe 3 for cardboard, and then or put your cardboard in a separate flat trailer of sorts. So different ways of doing it, but you want to make sure, right? The thing is, people are going to put wherever it happens to be, wherever's convenient. So you want to make sure that they don't overfill. That is a concern for sure.
So the comment I want to make is, if you want to do this in baby steps, right now there's about 200 households participating. The diversion rate is only 3%. Part of our USDA project was on outreach and engagement. So if somehow we can get messaging out to all the residents, and that 200 households goes to 400 households or 500, you're at 6, 7, 8%, and you can start thinking about that baler, because now you got that much more material coming in. If you get the baler and you can compact everything and get it down to Phoenix, the shipments are more efficient and more financially they make more sense.
Better revenue.
But yeah, better revenue. So the trade-off is better. So the point is, maybe some outreach can increase the number of households that participate just in Pinetop. Don't even have to think about this, folks. So that's another way to think about this.
It's hard to digest because you have to take all of the situation that they put into here and try to pull out the pieces that work best for us, because they just ran scenarios based on what we've discussed with other towns and cities. Not all those fit.
So Sholo has a contract with Waste Management to do all their recycling.
Yeah.
How is that working out? You guys, some of you live in
Well,
Sholo.
I mean, I can't speak for Waste Management, but I'd assume they tell you it's probably a loss. So their money, their recycling material goes out to the transfer station, and then it's hauled from there to Sun City to what they call, there's a MRF in Sun City. So basically they're hauling it commingled, and they're having the same problem we are, or what our numbers show, is it would be very light, and they don't even compact it. So they're probably hauling double or triple what we are, and so just the fuel alone is wiping their benefit to it. The rural communities just can't haul that much.
Is Sholo household collection?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big difference too. If you have a household collection, everybody pays. Right. And then everybody gets a bid.
Right.
Okay. Another the challenge with household collection is also get a lot of contamination too.
But to make the recycling work to benefit the hauler, it's got to have that throughput, and they just don't have it here. They charge an extra $3 on our bill in Sholo for that service.
Just to be clear now, would the baler only do cardboard, or can you bale plastics with that baler as well?
That's our suggestion, is that only the paper really makes sense. The plastic, I think you still do, because we all want to do plastic, and that's a big part of recycling. But the baler, the profit on the paper and the cardboard is more significant than the plastic is.
And you would need to separate out the cardboard from the paper.
Right. It's still a process, and that's the reason we never did it. If you remember, right, that comes down to a lot of work. You're basically a mini MRF. You're basically a mini sorting facility. So right now we're able to take it commingled to Vista Paper, and that's exactly what they do. They have conveyor belts there, and they separate out the paper and the cardboard, and then they bale it and they send it to market, and so that's where they make their profit. And that's why we don't make anything off of any of our recycling. We're just basically handing it off to somebody that's actually making money.
Any other questions or comments? So, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just one
Turn your
kind
mic on, please.
of observation, if you will. Everything is not a perfect world in recycling, because the bin that says it's cardboard, and the bin that says it's steel cans, and the bin that says it's aluminum cans, and may not actually be that, because people throw trash in there. And I just wondered if you accounted for the fact that trash happens in all of these recycling places. And we've been quite fortunate because Matt set it up so that we had someone kind of monitoring every time they drop it, when we're only open certain hours. So I think we've been good to keep the trash and hazardous material and needles and all the kinds of things that can go into the recycle. We've done a pretty good job of keeping that out, because we have our own trash, a separate collection for trash. So when you put these bins in these communities, how do you monitor that? Is that 24 hours they can use those, or?
No, what we did was, for each of the communities, they would have a drop-off location, and they would be staffed. So they would be monitored also. Yeah, you have to be fenced and monitored.
They would copy our concept.
Yes.
ADQ, everybody is believed that our concept is probably one of the few that'll work in rural areas. So they'd have to model after our concept. So it'd be the same kind of looking facility.
Yeah, and all the numbers work when, if the 10 container contains 10,
People would have to be monitored, since they have a staff person there, basically watching the people, just like the people here. They drop it in the bins themselves, but there's somebody kind of watching over them and making sure that they're doing it right. And you guys' material is incredibly clean.
Yeah. Well, I like the model where we could benefit by taking in higher volume, of course, as long as it's what it says it is on the outside of the container. We're probably okay.
I think the one thing I would add at the end of this, is the importance of this is the ability to go and apply for federal funds. I think at this point we're now opened ourselves up, wouldn't you agree? Yes. To the opportunity. So the EPA grant is just 1 year. The reason I wanted to take a baby step is I need to get my feet underneath me if this is really somewhere we're going to go. But in the next year we can apply for more. Whereas in the past, you got to remember, when we built this collection center, there was no federal funding or no funding available. So we still have loans that we're paying on because of that fact. However, going forward, there seems to be a push for more funding. And if those federal grants and fundings are available for the towns and cities, I think that you'll start to see them being okay with getting on board with getting back into the recycling scenario. So, but if we set ourselves up for success and look at the long-term range, even if it does or doesn't pan out, we will have a facility that succeeds here, in my opinion. And that's kind of my approach, is we won't take any steps that put us at risk. If we can take a step and get it with grant money and move into the baler or move into the trucking, then great, we'll do it. But that's got to be on some sort of grant that doesn't put us at any risk, in my opinion. That's just how I see the situation.
I think that's a great point, Matt. Thank you. So at this point, you're going to apply for that grant, and we'll see what happens.
So we've already applied.
Yeah.
Melina and I have spent
Yes.
sleepless nights over that grant because we really want to succeed. It'll give us our first brand new truck ever at the town. So we worked very, very hard at it. Melina's worked very hard at it. So do you have the dates of when we'll know?
So we don't have a set in stone date yet on when they're going to announce whether the grants have been awarded or not, but it will be sometime in April. We applied for a little over $500,000, and the minimum application was $500,000 with a maximum of $4 million. But don't quote me exactly, but I believe it's like something like $44 million. Is that correct? Yeah. $44 million available in funding. And that's strictly for political subdivisions, which we qualify as a political subdivision.
And that's a federal grant, so that's nationwide.
Correct, yes. It's through the Environmental Protection Agency.
Thanks, Melina.
You're welcome.
All right, well, we'll be on pins and needles through April then, right?
Yes.
Okay, anything else from the council? Okay, thank you, Raj. Thank you, Bill. We appreciate you both coming here this evening. This is a lot of information to digest, and I know we probably have this available for the council. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Phew. We'll move on then to item D5, which is consideration of resolution number 23-1663, approving a rate increase for town attorney services with Sims Macklin LTD and authorizing the town manager to execute the revised agreement. Keith.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. I'm glad I didn't have to follow Vic. My eyes were teared up and were a little red, and I wouldn't want to be on Facebook camera with red eyes. So it was a very heartfelt thing to see K9 Vic retire and to hear that over the radio. So before you this evening, as you know, our current agreement with our town attorney is in place until June 30th, 2024. A few months ago, Mr. Sims approached me and asked, hey, I've operated at the same hourly rate since the whole 16 years that he's been here and never had an increase. So he asked about the possibility of increasing it to the hourly rate to $225 per hour. So I asked him to draw up an amendment or a new agreement. And so he sent that to me, and one of the things that was different in there, the only two things that were different than the current agreement is the hourly rate, and then he also extended the contract to June 30th, 2026. So I chuckled about that, and I said, oh, great, we'll both be able to retire together. And he laughed and said that how much he really appreciates working with the town of Pinetop-Lakeside because we have such continuity and among the council. He is writing a diary or a book about, a tell-all book about all the things that happen up here. We've had a lot of unique things to deal with legally. So that being said, so, you know, as you can see from the agreement, there are several things that his office does, and obviously Bill isn't the only one operating in his office, and he has you know, other attorneys and other people that help address the different things for the town, and drafting ordinances, resolutions, negotiating contracts and leases. And we have a lot of IGAs and MOUs with the county and the state, and we have them with other entities. And it's just amazing what I've seen over the years that we get these from the other entities and send them to Mr. Sims for his review, and he finds a good number of things that need to be addressed that could have been missed in the agreements. So he's been very diligent on that. He's been very responsive to our calls and in the evenings and on weekends and such. He's been you know, he's always provided general legal advice and counsel in areas such as election law, property law, planning and zoning, code enforcement, contract law, procurement law, contracts, personnel, improvement districts, open meeting law, grants, insurance, state and federal law, and municipal law. So it just as we all know that municipal the things that happen for municipalities is different than what you might go through in the business world or in other working with people for personal issues. So 2 years ago, when I brought the current agreement to the council, and in the discussion, the question was raised about putting it out to a request for qualifications to open it up for requests for qualifications. At that time, I mentioned that if it was the desire of the council that in 2024, that if that was their desire, then we would put this out to bid. So that's, the question before you tonight is to approve an agreement that has a new hourly rate and either accept the 2026 date or amend it to 2024, and then we would go out for request for proposal or qualifications. Again, I look at the qualifications, and Mr. Sims covers a lot of territory with his qualifications, and that would be hard to match. That's the only thing I will say on that.
I think not only his qualifications, but those of his
Staff.
his staff and
Yeah.
his, yes. Vice Mayor.
I mean, I would like to propose at some point, but we'll talk about it first, an amended motion, because again, I'm the one who brought this up about 2 years ago. And again, as I look back over the minutes, I mean, we had just recently dedicated a park to Jack Barker, who was a town resident who did contract work for the town as an attorney. We encourage buy local, keep things local. And I just think it's a disservice to the community members who've elected us if we don't give them an opportunity to at least put in, what is it, the request for qualifications, allowing them the opportunity. I don't know whether any will. I take that back. At least one who actually serves as an attorney for another town told me he would like to at some point. But whether they qualify or not, again, I don't know. I'm certainly happy with Bill Sims, but again, as an elected official in this community where we try to give local businesses every opportunity, I think it's unfair not to allow them to at least have a shot at putting in for something like this. Again, whether they do that or whether they get it, that's another question. But I think as elected officials, it's up to us to try to allow that. And again, I have no problems again with increasing his fee. I think that's great, but I would say we need to keep the agreement the way it was. And in June 30th of 2024, then put out the opportunity for local business members who are attorneys, if they have if they want to put in for something like that.
I think you've made some really good points. I think recently in our community, however, we've had some alleged conflicts of interest among the people serving within the town. And I think in a small town, an attorney who is local is going to have, I mean, we have interactions with each other all the time, and I question whether they could truly represent us. And I'm not questioning their integrity, I'm just saying that they've got interactions with some of the people that we're interacting with on a legal matter. So sometimes I think, while I 100% agree shop local is the best thing to do, I think sometimes it's better to have an outsider advising us on these legal issues. But of course, I'm open to RFQs. I definitely think we need to honor his request for the increase in his hourly fee. Anybody else have comments? Councillor Smitzer, Councillor Smith, anything?
No, I kind of mirror your.
Mic on.
I think there's a very good chance using a local attorney is going to have a third of the time he comes up with something will be a conflict of interest. Just because of the size of the town, there's not that many attorneys. Competent attorneys.
Okay, well, this is an action item, so if somebody wants to make a motion, further discussion.
I would make an amended motion.
Well, we don't have a motion
Okay,
yet, so
all right.
you can make the motion how you choose to.
Okay. I would make the amended motion that we, I move to approve resolution number 23-1663, amending the agreement for legal services with Sims Macklin Limited, increasing the hourly billing rate to $225 and authorize the town manager to execute documents for the revised agreement. But I would strike the part that goes to extending the period to June 30th of 2026 and make it June 30th of 2024 as far as when his contract is
we have a second? Hey, I don't hear a second on that one. That motion will die for lack of a second. Do we have another motion? Councilor Smith?
I move to approve resolution number 23-1663, amending the agreement for legal services with Sims Macklin Limited, increasing the hourly billing rate to $225, and authorize the town manager to execute documents for the revised agreement.
Thank you. Councilor Snitzer, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. That carries 3-1. Thank you, Keith. We will move on then to item D6. This is a public hearing, discussion and consideration of adopting ordinance number 23-461, amending Town Code Title 5, adding Chapter 5.28 regarding licensing, vacation rentals, and short-term rentals. Jeremiah.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. Tonight we have, as we discussed at the work session 2 weeks ago, the language for an ordinance that would regulate short-term rentals. We're proposing to regulate it per Arizona Revised Statute 9-500.39, which gives us a little more teeth on how we can, in our ability to actually regulate these. We can require a fee for a licensing, short-term rental licensing, and what we're proposing is requiring a $250 fee. We'll bring an amended fee schedule in a few weeks to that effect. And so basically, since short-term rentals, the state preempted us before, we had both of our hands tied behind our back, and now we have at least some way of regulating these. We have one hand, I guess, to say. We don't have full authority because our zoning code doesn't actually allow lodging in residential, but we're preempted by the state. But what we can do is what we have done, and what we're proposing is to put forward this ordinance amendment. It will go into Title 5. It will be similar to how our business licenses are operated and regulated through that same title. And there is a series of penalties that increase. They increase by how many violations you have. So the first one is $500, and the second is $1,000, and the third is $3,500. So they incrementally increase. And we could also pull the license if, for instance, the owner committed a felony, or they have 3 life, health, safety issues. So there's the ability to say and track that, and to follow up with it, because this is a big issue in our community, and I don't see anybody here tonight opposing this issue, opposing this ordinance amendment, and it's because the reason is everyone knows that this is an issue. And so that's what I'm proposing to you guys tonight, is to consider the ordinance that would allow us to at least be able to regulate that to some extent.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Any questions for Jeremiah? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there any member of the public that would like to address us tonight? Come on up. Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Jeff Punt, 248 West Summerhaven Lane. My question is for the council, is this going to be retroactive? Is this going to be grandfathered in, the people that are, the businesses that are now in rentals or in Airbnb, are those going to be grandfathered in and not have to get this license, or is this license going to be continued from now on? Or are they going to have to go back and get a license?
All individuals or anybody operating one of these types of facilities in our community will be required to get this
From
license.
now on, or retroactive?
Anybody currently operating, whether they were operating 2 years ago or 2 years from now, they will all have to do it.
Okay.
So just because you've got one in town doesn't mean you're exempt from doing this. So everybody will have to get that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other members of the public, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Continue on.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Counselor Smith would like to make the motion on this one. You ready?
I'm ready. Yes. I move to adopt ordinance number 23-461, amending Town Code Title 5, adding Chapter 5.28 regarding licensing, vacation rentals, and short-term rentals.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Jeremiah, for all your work on that. Moving on then to item D7, which is another public hearing, discussion and consideration of resolution number 23-1664 and ordinance number 23-462, amending Title 15, Chapter 15.08, drainage regulations to allow stormwater retention systems in certain situations. Jeremiah.
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, this is an ordinance that recognizes the fact that in some situations retentions are necessary. They're not necessarily required or smiled upon, shall I say, in every situation, but there are certain situations that this is probably the only way that we can be able to handle some of the drainage problems here in town. If you look out front, we have two here at Town Hall, so we really need to consider how we handle that. And it looked like at one point in the code, it must have been allowed because there's different areas where it talks about retention in different sections of the code. But then in the drainage section, it specifically excludes them. So what I'm asking is to allow them in specific situations where we can, one, get a sealed drainage report that shows that it will meet the state standards by draining down within 36 hours. And only in the situation where nothing else is feasible.
Any questions for Jeremiah?
So right now, our code does not allow for stormwater,
So there's, I guess I should step back and explain the distinction between retention and detention. So detention is allowed, and that is basically you store some of the water, you take the peak of the storm out of the system, and then you meter it out slowly. So you're letting it go slowly instead of all rushing through at once. Retention is you're not letting it out, you're holding it and waiting for it to percolate. And so one of the problems that we face up here is the soil situation. And so obviously these would require a soil analysis to show that it would percolate or provide an alternative system, an engineered system that would allow for that. The state standard mandates that it is not held in that basin for more than 36 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there any member of the public that would like to address us? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Anything else? In a motion then? Mayor? Ready? Anybody?
I'll make the motion.
Go ahead.
I move to approve resolution number 23-1664 and ordinance number 23-462, amending chapter 15.08 drainage regulations and strike retention drainage systems as stormwater detention systems, which are not permitted, and add stormwater retention systems to 15.08.040 requirements for stormwater detention and drainage facilities.
I'll second that. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Jeremiah, again for bringing something to our attention that needed to be corrected. Move on to item D8, was consider resolution number 23-1666, approving funding for FY 22-23 chip seal project, utilizing Pinal County contract number 175923, Navajo County materials contract, Arizona State rental contract, I'm not going to read that, and town purchase policy for additional equipment rental. Matt.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, before you, I'll try to make it quick because I know it's late. We have currently a chip seal that we want to do for a section of town. We've been trying to get to a chip seal plan for many years. We know that that's a better fit for our need in the area, especially with the continued issues that we're having with the roads and they're failing. From the pavement assessment this year that we completed, it was obvious that we had some areas of the town that we were starting to have some failure on it. Well, come to find out, we have the slurry seal that we try to do every 6 years now. And in the current section, you can see down there where the Elk and Wapiti areas are, there's a lot of yellow and red off of our current assessment. And going into Whispering Pines Lane, which also drops down into Walnut Creek Loop, there's quite a bit of yellow there too. That's what this chip seal is all about, is to bring those roads up to a higher PCI rating and try to get them out of that poor condition. So without spending a lot of time going into detail on, you know, each individual road, we took those whole sections that were supposed to be part of the slurry seal and we turned it into a whole chip seal. So this year we won't see, I don't expect to see a slurry seal. We talked about doing some sections in the top of the woods. We're still having conversations about that. That might or might not happen. The only reason we're not thinking about doing it is because of the continued amount of drainage work we have to do in there, and we know we're going to be hauling through that section quite significantly. I don't want to put money towards something we're going to destroy or damage. To go to the other map, if I can get it pulled up. This is actually the road that will be chip sealed this year. So I know that's kind of a rough sketch, but I just wanted to at least give you guys something to look at. So that's that whole area. If you're not familiar with this area, it gets a significant amount of snow, and it's currently still snow-packed. I think, do you have a rental up in this area too? Or
No, I don't, but I mean, I'm familiar with it.
yeah, it takes a beating, and so these roads are they're in really dire need. And actually, we've slurry sealed, we've crack sealed, we've done everything in our power in the last 7 years to work in this area and do what we can to keep it in the situation it is, and we're still falling behind. So I think this double chip seal over the top of it will be a huge improvement for these citizens, and I think they'll greatly appreciate us paying attention to the thing. It will also do great improvements for our PCI rating. So those poor and failed roads, there's quite a few in here, and that'll increase our PCI rating, which will be good for us.
Questions? Vice Mayor?
I have a question. So what's the life expectancy on the chip seal?
Yeah, chip seals are about 15 to 20 years. If you can put a slurry seal or a fog seal over the top of them, you even get a longer life. Some people are seeing 20 to 30 years. Currently, the county is using chip seals as roadways. So they take dirt roads and they're just putting chip seals over the top of them. They can fix anywhere from about 3/8 of an inch to a 1 inch a dip in the road or imperfection in the road. So they can make a significant difference in a set of roads.
Any other questions, comments for Matt? In a motion? Vice Mayor?
I move to adopt resolution number 23-1666, approving funding for fiscal year 22-23 chip seal project utilizing Pinal County contract number 175923, Navajo County contract B22-02-002, Arizona State rental contract ADSP 019-213364, and town purchase policy for additional equipment rental, and authorize the town manager to execute all documents.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion, a second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Mayor, one last thing I'd like to add to that too. I'd really
Yes.
like to see you guys see that section before and after. I think it would be good for everybody to get eyes on how bad it is and then what it looks like afterwards, if you don't mind.
When do you project? I know it's
I think we
uncertain.
have a specific date. Is it May? Mid-May.
But we need to get up there before the middle of May. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
idea. Item D9, presentation, discussion, and consider accepting the town's annual financial comprehensive report, as well as the annual expenditure and limitation report for the year ending June 30th of 2022. Kevin.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Tonight we have for you our presentation of the audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022. Presenting her presentation will be Crimson Singleton from... Crimson, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, hang on just a second. I was introducing you. So we have Crimson Singleton from the audit firm of Hinton and Burdick. She's going to give us her presentation. In your packets, you have the report, the annual comprehensive financial report. You also have the presentation that Crimson will be presenting, as well as you have the annual expenditure limitation report. We had a good audit this year, and I think you will see from what Crimson presents, it's a clean audit. And I guess I'll turn it over to Crimson and have her start her presentation.
Thank you, Kevin. Go ahead, Crimson.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for letting me be here this evening. I'm presenting the results of the 2022 fiscal year 22 audit. And so on that first slide there, if we go to as part of our audit, there's some reports that are in your financial statements. These are our reports on the audit, the results. So on pages starting on page 1, it's our auditor's report, and this is where we express our opinion on the financial statements. And our opinion is unmodified, or in other words, it's a clean opinion. So the financial statements are materially accurate based on our audit. And then there's a report we're required to issue over internal controls and compliance. And that's on page 103 of the audit. And while we aren't required to test controls, we are required to get an understanding of controls, and if anything stands out, we report those there. And we're happy to report there's no material weaknesses or no significant deficiencies. So clean report there. And then on page 105 is our state compliance report. And there were no findings there. So unmodified or clean opinion on that. And then if you go to the next slide, we have as I mentioned before, there were no findings and recommendations that we have to report. There were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, and no state compliance findings. There was one last year that got cleared up. It was had to do with your funding policy for the PSPRS, but that's taken care of now. So good there. So that's kind of the report on the results, and then the next I was going to go over a few just highlights, financial highlights, some trends, and things to look for, more of the numbers side of things. And as I'm going along, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And if Kevin has any comments or things he wants to add, he's welcome to add those as well. So for the government-wide financial highlights, we've got overall the net position of the town was about $6.9 million at the end of the year. And over time, as the net position increases or decreases, it can be an indicator of whether the health of the town is improving or deteriorating. For fiscal year 22, the net position increased by $655,000. And if we go to that next slide, this is taken straight out of the financial statements. This is the statement of activities. This kind of provides a breakdown of what makes up that $655,000 increase. On the very left-hand side, there's the expenses. There were, for fiscal year 22, there were $9.9 million in expenses. And then the program revenues, there were about $510,000 in charges for services. Operating grants were about $1 million, and capital grants and contributions, $96,000. And then the rest of the revenue covering those expenses are down below. Those are the general revenues, where you've got taxes and other things that aren't tied to a specific program, but they're just general revenues. And overall, those general revenues were about $8.9 million. And so that with the net of the expenses there and the revenues, that's the $655,000 increase for the year. And then if you go to the next slide, some of the significant capital asset activity during the year. Overall, the governmental activities assets increased about $400,000. There were additions of about $1.2 million, disposals of $50,000, and then depreciation using those assets was $866,000. And then the proprietary fund capital assets, they increased by a net of $7,000. There were about $20,000 in additions, and depreciation on existing assets was $13,000. And then some of the significant capital assets during the year started construction on the police department building, about $400,000 there. And then there was a lot of machinery and equipment, $315,000, and vehicles, $312,000. And then the next slide goes over the long-term debt and long-term liabilities of the town. The overall governmental long-term debt was about $12 million at the end of June 2020. And this is an increase of $9.9 million. And most of that increase was due to the issuance of the bond. Between the bond and the premium on the bond, there's a $9.8 million liability there for and the proceeds of that were used for the police building and to pay off the PSPRS pension liability. And then there were also some notes payable of about $390,000 to finance the purchase of some vehicles and equipment. And then there were some debt payments that reduced that of about $268,000. And then the other significant liabilities of the town, there's the net pension liability and the related post-employment benefits with the PSPRS and ASRS. At the end of the year, they were $8.2 million. And I just wanted to point out that will go down, but there's just the way that pension liabilities are measured. There's a 1-year lag in the measurement date on when it's reported. So it was measured as of 2021, but that's reported in 2022. So the bond proceeds that you issued above, they will be applied to that pension liability next year. So that should drop significantly next year, but just the way that those are measured and reported, there's a little bit of a lag. So that will go down next year. So, and then that's kind of the government-wide. Now we'll get into some of the fund highlights. So the fund balance of the general fund increased from $2.9 million to $3.8 million. And none of that fund balance has any restrictions on it, so it can be used as at the town's discretion. And the general fund reported revenues in excess of expenditures of $1.6 million. and that's before net transfers. There were about 838,000 of transfers out that were sent to be used in some of the other funds. And then the actual revenues received in the general fund were more than the final budget by 73,000, and the actual expenditures were 593,000 less than the final budget. And if you're interested or want to look more at the budget schedule, that's on page 70 of the financial statements. And then this next slide is just a balance sheet trend of the general fund. That top line is the assets. There were 5.1 million in assets. The bottom line is the liabilities and deferred inflows. There are about 1.3 million in liabilities and deferred inflows, and then the fund balance of the fund is 3.7 million. And you can see there have been some increases there in assets and other activity there, and we'll get into some of that on these next slide here. And just to point out, and as remember, the general fund it's reported on the modified accrual, so these liabilities and assets do not reflect any of the long-term debt or capital assets. All right, and then the next one is cash. The cash in the general fund increased by 1.5 million. There's now 4.5 million in cash in the general fund. And if we go to the next slide, these are the revenues and expenditures, and these do exclude the transfers. So over time, the general fund would normally kind of break even, maybe revenues a little bit ahead of the expenses, just to have a little bit of a buffer there. But over the last 5 years, revenues have exceeded expenditures. At fiscal year 22, there were $7.2 million in revenues and 5.6 in expenditures. And then there were also some transfers, as I mentioned before, about 840,000 that were transferred to the Capital Projects Fund and Solid Waste Fund. And a lot of the spike in 2021 in the revenues, a lot of that is due to the sales tax revenues with increased visitation, and in the town it's increased the sales taxes, and there's also been some federal funding. There was CARES Act funding in 2021, and then that was finished up, but in 2022 there was a little bit of ARPA funding that's part of that as well. But you can see in fiscal year 22 still have pretty high revenues, and most of that's the sales taxes that have remained constant or high continued on from the spike in 21. And then if we go to the next slide, these are the sales tax revenues, and you can see they've been increasing. There's a little bit of a sales tax rate increase a few years ago. So the spike in 2019, that small spike, was mostly from the increase in tax rates, and then remained constant a little bit in 20, and then with the increased visitation in 21 and 22, you can see the large spikes. So 7.1 million in sales tax revenues for fiscal year 22. And then on this next slide is other tax revenues. Overall, they've been increasing as well. There was a little bit of a decline in fiscal year 22, but not much. So there was about 560,000 in urban revenue sharing, 570,000 in state sales taxes, and then about 368,000 in auto load taxes that were received during the year. And then the next slide just combines all those tax revenues together. So overall, 8.6 million in those tax revenues for fiscal year 22, and that's an increase of 4% from fiscal year 21 and a 57% increase since 2018. And then on this next slide, these are the expenditures in the general fund. Overall, the expenditures did increase. There were 5.6 million in expenditures in fiscal year 20 and 4.9 million in fiscal year 21. A lot of the increases were in the general government function, and that was mostly due to the general services department. There were some insurance increases recorded there, and in the finance department there were salaries and benefits increases. And then the public works department also had some larger increases there, and that was also due to salaries and benefit increases. All right, so that's the general fund. The next slide here is the HERF fund, the Highway User Revenue Fund. Overall, the revenues and expenses may bounce around a little bit, as sometimes you'll save up some money for a big project and then spend down some of the funds. But overall, that top line, there's $1.8 million in revenues and $1.4 million in expenses in fiscal year 22. And some of the sales taxes are allocated to this fund, which does help, and that's part of the increases. And then overall, they're fairly constant with fiscal year 21. Revenues decreased slightly, and expenditures are about the same. And then if you go to this next slide, this is the cash in the fund. So as I mentioned, it can kind of bounce around a little bit in this fund as you save up some money to do larger projects. At the end of fiscal year 22, the cash balance was $912,000. And with the excess revenues over the expenses, those have been increasing the last couple of years. So. All right, and then the next fund is the Recreation and Tourism Fund. It was pretty break even in this fund. There's a small loss of $26,000 for fiscal year 22. There were about 1.2 million in revenues and expenses, and the expenses did increase a little bit more over last year, and a lot of that was due to some capital outlay purchases. And then the cash in the fund. Yeah.
Sorry, could I interrupt just for a second? I wanted to point out to the council that for audit purposes, the Recreation and Tourism Fund is parks, and what we used to have is Ad and Pro. So it will look different because I separate those out in the financials you get. So we have Ad and Pro separated out from the parks. But for audit purposes, these are combined together for the Recreation and Tourism Fund. That's why the numbers are so big and why it looks like we have so much cash there.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Crimson, go ahead.
No, thank you. Yeah, so then if we go to slide 19 there, that's the overall cash in the fund, and there have been some increased tax revenues in here, and it have allowed the funds to be self-sustaining. And in the past, I think there have been some transfers to the general fund, but overall, the last few years, the revenues collected in the fund have been able to sustain the activities and the expenditures in the fund. So at the end of fiscal year 22, there was $587,000 of cash in those two funds. All right, and then the next slide, I didn't prepare any graphs for this one, but the grants fund, it kind of varies year by year depending on what grants you have currently. And in fiscal year 22, There's about 125,000 in revenues and just shy of that in expenses. So overall, generally the grants fund breaks even. What you receive is what's spent. And the main activity in the fund for the grants fund this year was police department grants and some library grants and donations. All right, and then the capital projects fund. The main revenue sources in this fund are debt proceeds and transfers in as other funds transfer money to this fund to pay for the capital purchases or to pay for the debt. The debt payments are also recorded in this fund. And so there was that big spike in 2022, and that's mainly due to the bond that was issued for the police building and the pay down of the PSPRS pension liabilities. So there were $11.6 million in revenues and $8.6 million in expenditures. And 6.6 million of the expenditures were to pay down the public safety pension liability, and then 3 million of the revenue that was issued is for the police department building, and 2.5 of that has not been spent yet. So that's why there's such the big difference between the revenues and the expenses. And then there were also several vehicles and equipment and things purchased during the year that would have been captured in that revenue and expense as well.
Crimson, can I add one more thing there too, please? Sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that a lot of this is the way that this is presented here. We don't have $11 million in new debt because the $6 million is kind of offsetting with the pension liability. But that $6 million unfunded pension liability doesn't show in this fund. It shows up in our overall financial statements. So the new debt is the $3 million. And I just want to point out we don't have $11 million in new debt. So, okay, thanks, Crimson. Sorry.
Yep, no, thank you. So then if we go to the next slide, this is the cash in the capital projects fund. And I broke it out between restricted and unrestricted. The unrestricted is 69,000, and then, but the restricted is 2.5 million, and that's the debt that's been issued to pay for the police department building. And so it represents unspent debt proceeds. All right, and then the next slide is all of the governmental funds and their fund balances, comparing fiscal year 22 and 21. So the general fund is there on the left, and the very left-hand side is the 22, and then the 21 is the one right next to it. So you can see overall, the majority of the funds had increases in their fund balance. The general fund has over 3.5 million in fund balance, and the GFOA, that's the Government Finance Officers Association, they recommend a minimum of 2 months worth of operating expenditures in unassigned fund balance. And the town has approximately 8 months worth of expenditures in unassigned fund balance at June 30th, 2022. So overall, it's a good, healthy position at the end of the year. And then you can see the big increase in capital projects fund, but a lot of that's restricted. There's fund balance there available, but it's for the police. Most of it's restricted to be used for the police department building. All right, so those are the governmental funds, and then this next slide is the solid waste fund, and this is this slide here has the total revenues, expenditures, and I included the transfers in there. So the very top line is the total expenses. So in fiscal year 22, the expenses in the fund was about $258,000. The revenues was about $159,000. So those are customers paying for the services. And then to make up the difference, to be able to cover the expenses in the fund, the general fund has been transferring in some resources to sustain and pay for the expenses. So in fiscal year 22, that bottom line is the transfers in, and that's $114,000 from the general fund to cover the expenses of the fund. And that's it. As far as the slides, we thank the town for the opportunity to provide the audit services, and we want to give a special thanks to Kevin and all of those who helped us with the audit. It requires a lot of extra time besides their day-to-day duties to get us the information we need to successfully perform the audit. So we thank them for their efforts and all that they do. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take questions. Oh, and one more thing I also forgot. I didn't prepare a slide on this, but the annual expenditure limitation, you received a copy of that as well. We just wanted to mention that you were well below the limit there. The approved limit was 23 million, and then the expenditures subject to the limit were about 16 million. So the town was under the limit about 7 million. So you're good there. You're below the limit on the annual expenditure limitation report. So that's it. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take those. And if there's anything else Kevin wants to add, feel free.
Any questions? Kevin, anything you need to add?
I would just like to thank Crimson for all her work on this. She's a tremendous help to me. You know, it's a big undertaking to get this done, and Crimson has helped me now for, I don't know how many years we've been working with Crimson, but it's been a good relationship. So I appreciate all your help, Crimson.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for coming and listening tonight, Crimson. And Kevin, thanks for all your work. Keith?
I would just like to thank Kevin and Stacy both for their work on our financials throughout the year. Yourself and Councilmember Smith and Snitzer have been along for the whole 6 years that we've been here, and you have been able to see the tremendous change in the way our financials have been kept, and it's due to their hard work, Kevin's hard work, especially for the last 6 years, and Stacy jumping in this past year or so. I just want to say thank you to both of them for all their hard work.
Yes.
So it means a lot.
We appreciate your guidance in this area. Okay, this is an action item. Is there anybody else have anything? Vice Mayor?
I move to accept the town's annual comprehensive financial report and the annual expenditure and limitation report for the year ended June 30th, 2022 as presented.
I second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Thank you. That carries unanimously. Another year under your belt, Kevin. Good job. Keith, did you have something to add?
I do. Just before we adjourn the meeting, I would like to thank our P&Z Commissioner Harry Turner and Vice Mayor Sterling Buse for their work this week at the active shooting training. I don't know if they knew that they were going to be victims, but I hope they did. But they sure got used and abused for 2 of the days, and I appreciate their support of all the entities that were there. On top of that, I would like to recognize Dan, Chief Barnes, for attending the meetings. He was the only chief from a police agency that was there. They were so grateful to have a chief there so that to be aware of how important the active shooting training is in the community, whether it's for churches, schools, town buildings, whatever. 3 of our officers were also involved in that training. Gabe, Colin, and Jonathan. They were exemplary. I was so proud of each of them. They were each chosen to head one of the 4 squads or teams. They had Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta, and they just did a great job. And it's a testament to their training. It's a testament to the leadership to help to get them there, because this was out of their norm. This was different than what they've trained for in the past. But I appreciate their work, and then also our staff that was there participating today in additional training for Stop the Bleed and things like that. So thank you guys. Dan he did a great job. I was on his team and just really appreciated his leadership there. So
Thank you, Keith, for sharing that with us. Sounds like it was really good training. Anyway, there is no further business before us tonight, so we are adjourned. Thank you.